guys, there was a bill reintroduced in Congress that would actually provide clarity in crypto, and it could pawn the SEC in their crusade against crypto. Gary Gensler and the SEC, if they're afraid of anything, they're afraid of clarity. Because without clarity, they can just randomly make up their own BS rules and continue to sue everyone in the name of regulation by enforcement. But if there's more clarity, they can't actually do that. So this bill was first introduced in 2021, but now it's revised and reintroduced, and it's a bipartisan bill, which means it has support from both parties, which makes it much, much more likely to pass. And what it does is it clarifies a little bit on what's a security and what's not. Remember, the SEC's main strategy is part of this investment contract thing. If there's an investment contract or a perceived investment contract or promise, then they say it's a security. But this bill would clarify that a digital asset that's sold as part of an investment contract does not necessarily become a security. If passed, the Securities Clarity Act, that's what it's called, would help settle one of the most debated legal questions in the crypto space and make it more difficult for the SEC to argue that many existing tokens are unregistered securities. Now, what this bill does is like you can wrap assets in a securities offering that aren't actually securities. So I think this gives more weight to the credence that the initial ICO might be ICO or IDO or whatever, could actually be a securities offering, but the assets in there themselves aren't securities, which would actually help the fact that, hey, maybe let's say the XRP that Ripple owns are securities, but the XRP that's traded on exchanges are not securities. I think this would go a big step in clarifying that, and that's what the SEC doesn't want, because if that was made to be true, then it would lose its power to actually confiscate the majority of actually coins out there. And this would get rid of all the questions of whether it's sufficiently decentralized or not. So if this introduced Securities Clarity Act becomes law, the answer to the sufficiently decentralized question and can a security transform into something else will no longer be a question, because in it, what this means is like they won't be securities anyways. So there's no question of like, can they transform into non-securities? This is why this is so important. The bill essentially distinguishes between an investment contract transaction, which is a securities offering, and the underlying asset investment contract asset. So this is very, very important. It's bipartisan, so I'm really, really hoping it will pass. Because right now, the key question is whether a security can transform into a non-security. But with this distinction, they may not be securities in the first place. So it's a win-win situation if this can get passed. I think it's got an uphill battle to get passed, but I think in a couple of years it will come to, because it is actually bipartisan. And remember, Elizabeth Warren isn't voting on this because she's not in the House. I think if it gets past the House and gets to the Senate, they will adjust it, and then it will actually get passed. And this would actually secure that secondary markets, I think, aren't securities, which would screw over a lot of the SEC's plan. Remember that one judge in the LBRY case only said his ruling doesn't apply to the secondary market. He did not actually state whether secondary sales were securities or not. I think this would clear it up. So we want this bill to pass. It would completely pwn the SEC and a lot of their arguments, and I think they would be having a tough time. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.